Kevin is started the Center for Digital Media Innovation and Diversity at George Mason University. I know Kevin because he was one of our very early subscribers, and we've gotten to a point where we know almost all of our subscribers personally. And so we've had a lot of conversations about new media and so on, and on a very intrinsic level. So Kevin, tell us what's going on with your center.
Okay. I'll start it. Thank you. You haven't even heard what I have to say yet.
That's good.
I'll start by saying I am at George Mason University and have been there for about 10 years. And last year I started the Center for Digital Media Innovation and Diversity. And before that, I actually was a software designer and developer, and the company I worked for was the first company to make educational software for the Sony PlayStation 1. We did that as a startup in San Diego, California. I did that for a number of years, and then decided to teach after everything kind of, went down. So I have a background in design and development, and then in the university I want to teach people how to build the stuff in a good way. And as a part of the work that I'm doing at George Mason and through the center, I have a NSF grant where we go into Washington, D.C. and we teach middle and high school students how to build educational games using science and math content. And so on one hand, gaming is educational and we need to strengthen that, but we also need to give students the ability to create their own content. So that's what will come through in what I'm talking about today. I also want to thank Warren and Robin for giving me the 10 minutes or 15 minutes to talk about this topic, and I applaud them for thinking that it was important enough to include in this venue. So the Center for Digital Media Innovation and Diversity really focuses on research, design development, consulting, and providing access to diverse and innovative digital media. So next slide. So everybody over the next few days is going to be inundated with these new media. The title of my presentation is New Media, New Diversity Challenges. So here's some of the new media. And this is the Horizon report, 2010 Horizon report, talks about the years to adoption for certain technologies. And so the first one is mobile computing, so you see the tablet. Years 2 to 3 really focus on electronic books and augmented reality. And then in 4 to 5 years, you're really looking at Project Natal or gesture-based computing. And so when you think about all of this technology, and when you go out or you go downstairs and you look at all the cool stuff, I want you to be wowed, and I want you to say, this is really cool. But then I also want you to think about, how can this stuff be used for the masses, not just for a small group of people who can afford it or who can afford to live in a certain place. So next slide. So this is from the Kaiser Family Foundation's report, Generation M. And what's interesting about this is that when you look at, and this is one of our challenges, when you look at the use of digital media technologies, television, video games, and movies by race, you see that blacks, Latinos, or Hispanics outuse all of those types of media as compared to white households. And you say, well, why is that a challenge? And the reason that it's a challenge is when you go to the next slide, which gets to issues of representation. So I just said that Black and Latinos use all of those forms of media the most. But when you look at representation, so what this slide shows you is what is the representation in media. The red represents census data, which shows you that representation of that population in the U.S. The blue is their representation in actual digital media products. So what you'll see is that for whites, their representation is upwards of about 83%, even though they're only about 70 or 75% of the population. Whereas Asian and Latinos, their representation in digital media products is probably about 5.5%, even though in the population they're upwards of about 15%. So it doesn't match. Now, what's interesting about Black or African Americans is that their representation is actually pretty high in relation to their to the population, but, and it's a big but, when you take out representations of athletes, gangsters, and street people, like if you think about games like Madden, for one, which would remove athletes. If you think about gangster games like Grand Theft Auto, and if you think about, or you think about 50 Cent's Bulletproof, you take the characters out of those games out of it, then it plummets, okay? So in addition to looking at the representation, you also have to look at what is represented. Women, for example, make up 38% of all gamers, but they only make up 15% of the characters in games, all right? When you look at Latinos are 12.5% of all gamers, but they only represent 2% of game characters. So you need to really think about, why is this an issue? And there was a study, census done at the USC, University of Southern California, by Dimitri Williams, and he found that there was a correlation between the demographics of game developers and the demographics of game characters, okay? So essentially he said, the people making the stuff, they're going to make characters that either they're familiar with or that they feel connected to. And so why does all of this matter? If you go to the next. The reason all of this matters is because even though we have the new media, which you guys are going to look at and say is great, and we have the challenges of representation and use, we also have some really good opportunities. And me being from a corporate background, even though now I'm in an academic setting, I understand that you can't be naive and talk about this stuff without talking about dollars. So one opportunity is an economic opportunity. And when you look at the buying power of African Americans and Latinos, who are in a lot of cases underrepresented in digital media, you'll see that in 2009, the buying power for African Americans was $910 billion, and it's projected to be $1.1 trillion in 2014. You look at the buying power of the Latino market, it's $978 billion. So, to all of you developers and everybody looking for the next big thing, build games that are inclusive and that actually involve the people from diverse audiences in the design and development of the product. More importantly, I think there's an educational opportunity. And we all know that media does create cognitive and affective environments, and it impacts the way children learn about people, places, and things. Right? That's why we won't let our kids watch certain things or listen to certain things, because we know the power of media. Once we harness that, then we look at identity. And Arserman has made a connection between the identity of children and their academic achievement. So what does this have to do with digital media and what we're talking about? What it means is that if we can build educational products or digital media products that are inclusive and that focus on a wide range of diverse groups in representational settings, then that will have a positive impact on students' identity, which will then lead to academic achievement.